Welcome to The Connecting Place with Andrea Fabry, making the connection between health and your environment. Now, here's your host, Andrea Fabry.
Well, today we're going to talk with a husband and wife team who are committed to raising their children very differently, without screens. Screen-free mom is a psychologist. Screen-free dad is a business professor. He's in the field of marketing and communications. They have 2 children, ages 5 and 1. They launched the website Screen-Free Parenting in the spring of 2016, and they're finding lots of enthusiasm from other parents who are equally disillusioned with the direction that our culture is heading, but really don't know what to do. So welcome to the program.
Oh, thank you so much for having us, Andrea.
Yeah, really glad to be here.
So you've been parents for 5 years. When did this vision take hold?
You know, I think it happened rather organically. I am a psychologist, so I have that background, but I probably came at it the way any mom did, which was when I was pregnant. We read the American Academy of Pediatrics recommendations, no screens until 2, and along with a million other recommendations, right? Breastfeeding is best, all of these other sorts of things. And we thought, okay, we're gonna start out right, and we're gonna follow the rules. The only difference probably was that having the psychological background that I do, I knew that one of the reasons for that recommendation was that infants who spend time in front of screens talk later and have fewer words. And that it kind of snowballs, and they still have fewer words when they are 5 years old and they're entering school. And so I knew there was a really good reason for those recommendations. And then once our daughter hit 2, and we had a lot of other families around us who were showing their children screens, we thought, well, we don't really want any of the problems that these other families are seeming to have, and our daughter is doing great.
Yeah.
And there was no light switch that turned off at 23 months and 29 days, to 24 months that now we should begin showing her screen. So that's sort of how it started with our daughter.
Yeah, and I think it was sort of a healthy experience for us, because I came at it, I was kind of, my third parent was a television, so, and I'm a business person, so I don't necessarily think about the same types of stuff and look at the same research that, so it was kind of an opportunity for us to kind of come at it from 2 different perspectives, but I was willing to see what happened, and we started noticing, like, our daughter had, a really solid attention span and was extremely interested in books, and we kind of could tell that because she wasn't being fed these, like, extreme fast screen shifting shows that were kind of setting the standard for what's entertainment, she was finding what was in books so much more interesting and
simple things, what was outside and what was, which all children do. But we wanted her to continue to set the standard of what was entertaining for her rather than somebody else setting the standard of what was entertaining for them.
Yeah.
So then you had the idea of the website because of the business technology knowledge and the psycho. Is that what you just thought, well, this could be really helpful through the web?
The web came so much later. So our daughter now is 4 years old, and we just had the idea. We just started the website 2 months ago. And we had the idea prior to starting the website, probably about 2 days before we started it. So that came much later, that the older she gets, the more interested people are in the idea that we're screen-free. So people accepted it a little bit more when she was 1 year old or 2 years old. And now people are well, why? Why would you do that? And so having these long, in-depth conversations with friends and family and colleagues about, well, actually, there's really a lot of good reasons to do that. And there's absolutely no harm that can come from it. It's one of those risk-benefit analyses that you can do where, there could be some problems if we show her screens, or there could be none. But if we don't show her screens, there's going to be no problems at all. So let's just keep going with that.
And I think we also did a little bit of research and saw that nobody else, it wasn't a very popular topic. And so that was kind of interesting to us that, if there are other parents doing this, and I knew that we knew that there would be, why not create a place for people to go to get sort of motivation to kind of follow through with this, and kind of a support network for ideas. And it kind of, what we try to do with the site is bring together the current state of research on the matter of how all this highly engaging screen time in lots of heavy amounts with young children is affecting them with alternative options. So that's kind of what the site brings together, that, we felt like there wasn't a lot out there, and we thought it would be kind of neat to see, are we the only crazy people doing this, or is this something that other people might actually be interested in?
And a third reason was I read a lot of psychological research, and so I also see them when they pop up in popular press articles, so on CNN or on Huffington Post. And I was starting to get extremely frustrated with these articles that would say, new research shows that children who have screens during classroom time are doing worse, even if they're not using it for classroom-related activities. Their comprehension is worse on exams. And then the end of the article would be, but we live in this screen-free world, so what are we really going to do? And that was extremely frustrating. Like, actually, there are some things that we can do, and they're really easy, and we're doing them in our family, and we can do them, in academic settings and elsewhere, and we don't have to throw our hands up and say, oh, this is the world we live in. We don't have to do it the way that it's being done right now.
I want to read you this quote from Neil Postman. Are you familiar with his book, Amusing Ourselves to Death, written in 1984? Yes. Where he says, no medium is excessively dangerous if its users understand what its dangers are. This is an instance in which the asking of the questions is sufficient. To ask is to break the spell. And really what you're doing is you're looking at this research, you're looking at the trend, and you're saying, wait a minute. Just asking that question, and what's frustrating you, it seems to me, is nobody's asking.
Right. Mm-hmm. Right.
And my question to you as parents, and I think any parent listening would ask this, so what do you two do with your screens and your phone and your computer?
Yeah.
That's a great question. And I think that's been one of the most wonderful parts of the parenting journey for me, is I continue to grow each year because I can see I want to change things in myself, because I want my daughter to do things differently. And so if I want her to be calm, frustrated, then I need to be calm when I'm frustrated, right? So it's a lot easier as a parent to work on yourself. Actually, I think it's easier to work on yourself than to scold your child for doing something that they're probably naturally seeing in their environment. So we don't watch any television when they're awake. Occasionally we will watch a program after they go to sleep, although not that often. Naturally, they do know what screens are. Our daughter knows that we can check the weather by looking at a screen. Or she knows that we can look up some sort of information.
And take pictures and videos.
And take pictures and videos. Now, I have taken it a step further in that I don't want to be mindlessly on my phone or on a screen at any time, really. I don't want to be doing anything mindlessly. And so I have locked my phone. Adam has the code. I don't have the code. But I've locked my phone with like a kid's lock application so that I actually can't access the internet on my phone. I wanted a more dumb phone rather than a smartphone, but I pay so little for the plan and the smartphone that I had that I would be paying more to switch. So I've made my smartphone dumb so that I don't do that. So I don't have any of I don't play, I don't look at GPS, I don't check Facebook, I don't do any of that. I do my work when my kids are at school or when at preschool or when they're napping.
You work in this, so what do you do?
It's fine. I'm on the screen all the time. At work, I'm on the screen all the time. I think there's an expectation kind of in the field that I'm in that I'm always connected. So we have some tips and tricks that we use at home to try and keep me disconnected at those really important times. Work, I put the phone down and I don't come back to it really until the kids are asleep. And then if there's something really important, I take care of it then. But it's been one of those things like we were talking about it's a journey, because running this site has actually forced me to spend a little bit more time on screens than we would have just been living our lives kind of organically without a bit of this documentation. So it's really forced me to kind of examine my relationship. And so I see my time that I spend looking at my phone or playing on a computer a lot more than I ever did, because I'm so cognizant of the research showing the effects of all this stuff on you. And so it's kind of helped me.
Starting to ask that question which is what you talked about in that quote,
Yeah.
you know?
Right.
Yeah, and by no means, like, I don't think either of us are really, like, Luddites when it comes to technology. I wear a Fitbit so I can keep track of my fitness, which I'm sure you guys are probably cringing because I cringe when I wonder what that thing's doing to me while I'm sleeping. But, like, I think when it comes to, like, we're probably very typical modern parents in every way. It's just that when it comes to our kids, because their brains are still developing. And I know that, like, you know, the Facebook feed is changing the way my brain is entertained and the types of things that I find interesting, especially being in the marketing field. Like, everything we're doing, like, we used to do a lot of press releases, but now people don't read. So we do, like, these tiny chunkable, snackable information that we shoot out on Facebook, and that's what people want. They want, like, a 10-second clip instead of a 3-minute video. And, you know, it used to be that an article was interesting enough, and then it had to be video. Now it has to be a 10-second video with subtitles so that they can watch it silently while they're on the toilet. You know, it's like the world is just evolving, and we're a part of that evolution, but we're also protecting our children from what may be some negative effects of all these things. So, it's a bit hypocritical to run the site, which we call screen-free parenting, and then kind of be on the screens all the time at my work, and then helping to run the blog. But it's really more about the children. Like, and I'm not so concerned. You know, once you have children, you become a little bit less concerned about your own safety and more concerned about your children. I think that's a bit of it for me, is that I'm much more interested, like, in the effects that all this is going to have on my children. I'm kind of screwed at this point, but I'm not so worried about myself.
So what about go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, when I look at, like, the research that Megan pulls up on a developing child brain and the number of, you know, connections that are happening in the brain at that age, and how plastic the brain is, it's pretty incredible, and it's pretty scary to think about the amount of time that children are spending in front of these screens. In some of the research we did, in 1970, the average age that children were introduced to regular television use, they were 4 years old, and now it's 4 months old. And in 2012, it was 4 months old, and I'm sure that statistics probably changed a little bit now. So, I mean, just think about what that 4-year-old in 1970, how their brain was developing, and the types of things the connections that were being made, versus 4 months old now being given a product that's designed to keep your eyeballs glued to it. And these companies make their money by keeping your kids' attention. We just wrote an article about Netflix, and nobody creates better addicting television for adults, and they're doing it for children too, at Netflix with their awesome content that they're creating. And I say awesome because as an adult, it's really fun to watch some of their shows, and the same type of, you know, research that goes into what makes their shows so addicting is for adults is the same thing that's happening for children, and it's kind of interesting and kind of scary.
So talk to the parent who does feel, and hearing this, you know, they're struggling trying to balance this in their own life, but they know what they know. Hearing this just validates what that instinct says. You just look at a child who's so stuck on their device, and they feel, you know, there's nothing I can do. But the fact is, it's never too late to divert this.
No, it's never too late to divert this. My first, you know, piece of advice would be that you're the parent and you have the ability to change the rules, so to speak, at any time. You know, that's actually your job, and you change the rules all the time, probably, right? You know, we used to drive you to school, but driving you to school doesn't work anymore because you're not making as many friends. We want you to connect with people on the bus, and we want you to talk to kids at the bus stop, so you're going to take the bus now, right? So you evaluate, how is your child doing with all the different moving pieces of your life and all the different people that are in their lives and what's going on, and you may choose to make a change because they're not doing as well in school anymore, they don't seem as happy, or whatever the reason may be. And so I think it's never too late to change what you're doing. In fact, there's research that was done on teenagers that after they spent 7 days at a camp where screens weren't allowed, they had better social awareness. They had higher social skills, basically, and they were better at reading other people's social cues. So 7 days at a teenager, and there was changes, so they were able to improve. So I would say that if you feel there are negative effects for your child, if they're spending time in front of screens, it's never too late to change it. And we did write another article about, alternatives to being totally screen-free. You don't have to be totally screen-free. We're not going to be totally screen-free for the entirety of our children's lives. But you can certainly wean it, pull the reins in a little bit if you feel like it's excessive for a child.
Yeah, we don't want to hinder our children's social lives when they get to, the grades where maybe they're going to be talking about particular shows or something like that their friends are watching. We don't want to socially ostracize our children from their social networks because of these views. So I think right now we're kind of teetotalers when it comes to around the house and what kind of technology they're exposed to. But that's definitely going to change as they bracket up into age brackets where they can use the technology for pro-social things like cameras and things like that, so they can start documenting their life and creating things. And Megan wrote a great article about the different types of screen time. There's maybe you remember what those different pieces were better than I would.
Sure, it's going to be different if they're passively consuming something from a screen, which I would consider a video game playing and watching television, something where they're engaging in a world that somebody else created, versus if they're using screen time for a social reason, which is a little bit better than passive, although it can still be negative in a lot of ways, versus if they're using a screen to create something, right? So if your child is an aspiring film person, and so that's going to be really different than if they're sitting in front of the screen for 4 hours watching TV.
Talk to us about just thinking outside the box here. Sometimes as parents we get focused on, no, don't do this, when we're not really giving any kind of alternative. And especially as they get older. And I was so drawn to your article on outdoor toys. And immediately I thought, bikes, frisbees, that's true. Yes, we need to get them outside. Just talk a little bit about that.
Sure. So I think that's also, we had to actually flip our mindset around to start the website because we don't really think about screens very much. Certainly not in the course of our children's lives. This is kind of a decision we made. Things are going really, really well. As she gets older and she asks us about it, we'll have to think about it a little bit more. But for this age, we don't have to think about it. What we do think about a lot is the things that we want our children to be doing. We want them to be reading. We want them to be connecting with us and with other kids their age. We want them to be playing. We want them to be developing a sense of independence and doing some quote-unquote work or have some responsibilities. What we really, really want them to do is to be outside, which is where they can play, where they can connect. And so, yes, we did write an article about the must-have toys for outside, which as a parent, I didn't know what the must-have toys were for being outside. Children did, and they taught us all about them, and they're the sticks that they can collect and use as walking sticks and all sorts of other things. They're the rocks that they can pretend are little people and line up in a circle and read to. They're the leaves that they collect, and each one is beautiful, and they like it, and we've got to take this one home, and did you bring a bag, Mom? They're the puddles that they can stomp in. And so these are the things we think about as parents, much less so the screens, but the things that they're enjoying, the things that we can see they're clearly benefiting from. They sleep well after they've spent 3 hours hiking around the woods and having a great time, and they're in a better mood, and they're in a better mood as soon as we get them outside. And there's probably a psychological reason to that, there's a biological reason to that, and there's a reason to that we probably don't even understand, right? But that we're natural beings, and it's natural for us to be outside.
Well, if you're looking for encouragement and inspiration, I recommend screenfreeparenting.com. And thanks to both of you, and all the best as you continue to motivate all of us to break the spell, as it were, to continue to ask questions. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
You've been listening to The Connecting Place, making the connection between health and your environment. Join us again next time for The Connecting Place with Andrea Faber.